All right, everyone, get ready, because today we are going deep, deep, deep into the world of Sherlock Holmes. But, this isn't going to be like every other Sherlock thing you've heard before. We're going to, really try to uncover the things that make this character such a legend.
Yeah, that's right. We'll be breaking down like all of his traits, skills, and talking about how people have seen him over time. You can kind of think of it as like going deep inside the mind of a legend.
Okay, I like that. So, I think it's so interesting how even a literary genius, like Sherlock Holmes had his own influences, right? You can kind of see like little bits of those earlier detectives in him, like Edgar Allan Poe's C. Augusta Pym.
Yeah. And what's really cool is that like Conan Doyle, the guy who made Sherlock, he actually puts those influences like right into the stories. Holmes, he actually criticizes Dupin in the stories, like pointing out how much Dupin relied on chance and his explanations being way too complicated.
So it's almost like Doyle is saying, my detective is even better than your famous detective.
I love that. Exactly. He makes Holmes seem even smarter by having him critique the very guys who inspired him. It's like a subtle thing, but it really works to show how original and smart Holmes is.
Yeah, I totally see that. But for someone so brilliant, so celebrated, Holmes's early life is surprisingly, mysterious. There's not a lot known about where he came from.
That's true. We know that he was born in 1854,
Mm-hmm.
and like his family were country squires, but like the details about his childhood and education are totally unknown.
And then there's his brother, Mycroft.
Yeah.
Super mysterious older brother. He's described as being even smarter than Sherlock. But he's content to, stay in the shadows of the Diogenes Club.
Yeah. Mycroft is such a cool character. He's kind of like a walking database
Mhm.
and advisor to the British government, so he has like a ton of power, but he never wants to be in the spotlight.
He's almost like the first intelligence analyst,
Yeah.
Like he's going through all this information
Yep.
and pulling strings behind the scenes. It makes you wonder what it was like for them growing up. Like two crazy smart minds under one roof.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Their relationship is definitely one of the most interesting parts of the Sherlock Holmes world. Like, are they rivals, partners, or a little bit of both? It really makes you want to learn more.
Right. Okay, but let's talk about Holmes's legendary deductive abilities. He's so good at seeing those little details. A scuffed shoe, like a loose thread on a shirt, a little shake in someone's voice. And from those tiny things, he can figure out a whole story.
It's not even just seeing them, it's how he makes connections. He sees patterns that other people completely miss. Remember in Scandal in Bohemia? He figures out that Watson had been out in bad weather and that his servant girl was clumsy, all just by looking at Watson's shoes.
It seems so simple.
Yeah.
But how many of us would even notice that stuff? Let alone figure out what it means. It's almost like he has superpowers.
Yeah, and that's like the genius of Conan Doyle, He made a character that shows the power of paying attention and thinking logically, but he takes it to like an unbelievable level.
But here's where things get really wild. Sherlock Holmes isn't just a master of deduction, right? He's also a cryptanalyst, a master of disguise. He even seems to understand psychology and mindfulness, way before anyone else.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like in The Adventure of the Blue Carbuncle, for example. He uses psychology to trick a thief into confessing. Like he plays with the guy's anxieties and emotions to get a confession without ever having to use force.
It's almost like he's like a puppet master,
Yeah.
controlling people's behavior to get what he wants.
Exactly. And his disguises are just as impressive. He can change his look so wide that even Watson, his best friend, doesn't recognize him.
It's like he becomes a totally different person. Like in The Sign of Four, he pretends to be an old sailor with a limp and this whole fake backstory.
It's not just changing clothes, though, He completely becomes those people, like their mannerisms and even how they think. It really shows his acting skills and how much he understands people.
It's almost like watching a one-man show with Sherlock Holmes playing all the parts.
Now, to change things up a little, we have to talk about Sherlock Holmes's relationship with women. It's really complex and kind of contradictory. He seems to see them with both suspicion and admiration.
Yeah, that's so true. He'll say these big general things about women being hard to understand, but then he treats Mrs. Hudson, his landlady, with so much respect.
Yeah, exactly. He even says women are never to be entirely trusted, not even the best of them. But then he'll do things that completely contradict that. He shows kindness to women who are in trouble. And his interactions with Irene Adler, the only woman to ever outsmart him, are full of this, grudging respect.
It's that line about Irene Adler that always gets me. To Sherlock Holmes, she is always the woman. It makes you think that she really left a mark on him. Like maybe she challenged his ideas about women being intelligent and clever.
Yeah, totally. Irene Adler is like a turning point for Holmes.
Yeah.
She forces him to see that he's not perfect and that women can be just as smart as men.
She's like the one puzzle he could never quite solve, which, knowing Holmes, probably made her even more interesting to him.
Definitely. Now, moving on from his relationships, we have to talk about Holmes's network of informants. They're like his secret weapon. They give him access to information that he could never get through normal means.
It's pretty cool to imagine this whole web of connections, from kids on the street to people high up in the government, all feeding information to the great detective.
He uses every resource he can, like the Baker Street Irregulars, that group of kids who are like his eyes and ears on the streets of London, and then people like Langdale Pike, who gives him inside information about the criminal world.
The Baker Street Irregulars are so interesting. They show us this side of Victorian London that we don't usually see, and they give Holmes a totally different view of what's happening in the city.
They really show how resourceful Holmes is, and how he's willing to use methods that other people wouldn't. They're a reminder that even the smartest person sometimes needs help from people who see the world differently.
Okay, and finally, we get to the part that people often forget about because he's so smart. Sherlock Holmes, the man of action. This guy isn't just a brain. He's surprisingly strong and can handle himself.
Right. He's a really good boxer. He knows how to use pistols and a cane, and he's incredibly strong. Remember in the Speckle Band? He straightens out a bent fire poker without any effort, just like his enemy did.
Yeah, but I was picturing him, hunched over some clue, not fighting in some dark alley. It's so cool how this side of him is often forgotten.
His physical abilities are definitely important, but they don't get as much attention as his intelligence. But they're just as important to his success. Like in The Solitary Cyclist, he gets into a fist fight with this really tough guy. And of course, Holmes wins. And then there's the legendary Baritsu.
Oh, yeah. The mysterious martial art he uses to beat Moriarty. It sounds almost made up.
The Baritsu is a really interesting example of Conan Doyle's creativity. It's probably based on a real martial art called Bartitsu, which was popular in England at the time. It combined things like jiu-jitsu, boxing, and cane fighting.
So it's not completely made up. That makes it even cooler. It's like finding a hidden treasure map in the stories. But even with all this knowledge and skill, there's still something mysterious about Sherlock Holmes. He's like a puzzle box with a secret compartment that we haven't found yet.
That's exactly what makes him such a timeless character, even though he's one of the most famous fictional characters ever. There's always something more to discover about him. It's why he still inspires new interpretations and adaptations, even after over 100 years.
It's like we should have him all figured out by now. But there's always this element of surprise, this hint that there's something deeper going on. Like, for example, his personality can be so contradictory. One minute he's super cold and distant, and then next he's showing compassion.
Yeah. He keeps his emotions under tight control, like they get in the way of his logical thinking. But you can see glimpses of deep feeling, especially in his relationship with Watson. It's that loyalty, that concern for his friend that shows there's warmth underneath his cold exterior.
I guess even a brilliant mind needs a friend to keep them grounded. And speaking of contradictions, what about all those weird things he does? The tobacco and the Persian slipper, playing violin at odd hours, those sudden moments of, deep thinking. Those aren't exactly normal for a Victorian gentleman.
Yeah, but those quirks make him seem more human, They remind us that even the smartest people have their strange habits. It's those contradictions, those flashes of humanity that make him relatable and even kind of endearing.
It's also interesting to think about how Holmes has been interpreted over the years. From the classic detective with the deerstalker hat to the modern tech-savvy detective. He seems to fit into every era. Why do you think he's so timeless?
I think he's become more than just a character from a specific time period. He's become like an archetype, a symbol of intelligence and the search for truth. Each generation sees him in their own way, finding new meanings in his character and connecting him to their own time.
It's almost like he's a chameleon, blending into different settings and cultures,
Yeah.
but always keeping that core brilliance and deduction. And there's something kind of theatrical about him, right? Like he's always performing for an audience, even when he's alone with Watson.
Yeah, I see that. That theatrical side is a big part of his charm. He loves that big reveal, showing off his deductions with a flourish. It's that showmanship that makes him so entertaining,
Right.
both in the books and on screen.
I can almost picture him taking a bow after solving a tough case. But it's not just the big moments, It's also those quiet moments of him observing things, That intense focus, those sudden bursts of inspiration, those are just as interesting because they give us a glimpse into how his mind works.
It's like watching a master artist at work, seeing every brushstroke, the way he carefully blends colors. It's in those details that you really appreciate how brilliant he is.
And then there's his relationship with London itself. It's like the city is another character in the stories.
Yeah.
This huge maze where his adventures take place.
Right. London, with its foggy streets and hidden alleys, becomes like a part of his mind, a place full of secrets and clues waiting to be discovered.
He seems to know London like the back of his hand. From the fanciest houses to the darkest opium dens. He moves through all levels of society so easily, gathering information from everyone he meets.
And that connection to the city gives the stories their special atmosphere. It's a mix of Victorian elegance and the rough side of the city. It's a world that feels familiar, but also kind of exotic. It makes you want to step into its shadows and explore its mysteries alongside Holmes.
Yeah, it really does. It's no wonder that Sherlock Holmes has inspired so many adaptations. From plays and radio shows to huge movies and TV series, every generation reinterprets him, finding new ways to connect with him and his world.
And what's really cool is how those adaptations often become part of how we see the character. Like, they influence how we think about him and the stories.
Like his deerstalker hat and Inverness cape. Those weren't actually in Conan Doyle's original descriptions. They were added by an illustrator named Sidney Paget, and then later made famous by plays.
It's so interesting how visual interpretations can become part of the written word. They shape how we all understand the character. Those images become inseparable from the character, even if they weren't in the original vision.
It's like a loop, with each adaptation influencing the next, creating this huge tapestry of interpretations. And even the things that aren't quite right or are exaggerated become part of the legend.
Definitely. Like the phrase, "elementary, my dear Watson," that line is so famous, but it never actually appears in Conan Doyle's stories.
Wait, really? I thought that was like his catchphrase. It just shows how powerful those reinterpretations can be. They can take on a life of their own and become part of the character's mythology.
It shows how flexible the character is. He can be reimagined, reinterpreted, but he's always instantly recognizable. That's a testament to how strong Conan Doyle's creation was. He's become even bigger than the stories themselves, almost like a mythical figure.
And the fact that they keep making adaptations across so many different mediums proves that Sherlock Holmes is a character that people still love. What is it about him that captures our imaginations?
I think he taps into something primal in us. Our fascination with solving puzzles. Our desire to understand the world around us. Our need for order in the middle of chaos.
He's like the embodiment of the power of observation, the thrill of the chase, the satisfaction of unraveling a mystery. He's like a beacon of rationality in a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable.
He gives us a sense of order, a belief that even the most complicated problems can be solved if we use logic and reason. And there's something kind of optimistic about that, isn't there?
It's comforting to think that,
Yeah.
even when faced with huge challenges, there's a solution out there if we just approach it with the right mindset. But what about his flaws? We've been focusing on his brilliance, but nobody's perfect, not even Sherlock Holmes.
You're right. It's important to acknowledge his flaws, too. Like, his arrogance can be pretty off-putting. And his emotional detachment, while it helps him in his work, can also cause misunderstandings and problems in his relationships.
He can be dismissive, even hurtful sometimes.
Right.
And his absolute beliefs that he's always right can sometimes stop him from seeing other points of view. It's like he gets lost in his own brilliance.
Yeah. He's a complex character, a mix of brilliance and flaws. And it's that complexity that makes him so interesting. He's not a perfect superhero. He's a flawed genius. And that makes his successes even more impressive.
It's in those imperfections, those moments of weakness, that we see his humanity, his vulnerability. It makes him more relatable, more real. It also makes his triumphs more meaningful because we understand the struggles he's gone through, the challenges he's faced.
His flaws become part of his journey, part of what makes him a complete character. And that journey, those adventures, those moments of brilliance and blunder, they continue to captivate us, drawing us into his world and challenging us to think differently.
It makes you wonder what Holmes would think of our world today. With all its technology and constant information, would he love the digital age or see it as a distraction from real observation?
That's such an interesting question. Would he be scrolling through social media for clues? Or complaining about how nobody does good old-fashioned deduction anymore?
Maybe he'd be a tech genius, hacking into databases and using algorithms to solve crimes. Or maybe he'd think it's all too superficial, like a digital smokescreen hiding the real truth.
Either way, I think he'd adapt. He was always great at using whatever tools he had. And his core principles, observation, logic, deduction, those are timeless.
That's a good point. No matter how much the world changes, the basics of problem solving stay the same. You still have to observe, gather evidence, and draw logical conclusions.
Exactly. And Sherlock Holmes, at his core, is a problem solver. He shows us that even in a world that's getting more and more complex, the human mind, with its ability to reason and analyze, is still our most powerful tool.
So in a way, Sherlock Holmes is more than just a character. He's a symbol of the power of human intellect.
Precisely. He represents our thirst for knowledge, our desire to understand the world, our need to find answers in the midst of chaos. And that's why, even after all this time, he continues to fascinate us.
Because in a world that often feels uncertain and unpredictable, Sherlock Holmes reminds us that there's always a solution, a reason, an explanation. We just need to train our minds to see it.
And as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of Sherlock Holmes, we leave you with this thought. What mysteries are waiting to be uncovered in your own life?
What clues are hidden in plain sight? Just waiting for a sharp mind to put them together. Maybe it's time to channel your inner Sherlock and start paying
The
attention.
game is afoot. Yeah, and it's in those imperfections, those moments where he shows weakness that we really see as humanity. Like he's vulnerable, it makes him more relatable, more real.
Right.
It also makes his successes, his triumphs even more impressive because we understand, what he's had to overcome, the challenges he's faced.
Yeah, I agree. His flaws, they become part of his journey, part of what makes him a fully developed character. And that journey, those adventures, those moments of brilliance and, messing up, they keep us interested. They pull us into his world or make us think differently.
That's a good way to put it.
It makes you wonder, what would Holmes think of our world today? With all the technology and the constant flow of information, would he be into the digital age or would he see it as like a distraction from real observation?
That's a fascinating question.
Right.
Would he be scrolling through social media, looking for clues, or would he be complaining about how nobody does good old-fashioned deduction anymore?
Yeah. Maybe he'd be like a tech genius hacking into databases and using algorithms to solve crimes. Or maybe he'd find it all too superficial, like a digital smokescreen hiding the real truth.
It's hard to say. But either way, I think he'd adapt. He was always so good at using whatever tools were available to him and his core principles, observation, logic, deduction. Those never go out of style.
True. No matter how much the world changes, the basics of problem solving stay the same. You still have to observe, gather evidence, and think logically.
Exactly. And at his core, Sherlock Holmes is a problem solver. He shows us that even in a world that's becoming more and more complex, the human mind with its ability to reason and analyze is still our most powerful tool.
So Sherlock Holmes is more than just a character. He's like a symbol of the power of the human mind.
Exactly. He embodies our thirst for knowledge, our desire to understand the world, our need to find answers in the middle of all the chaos. And that's why even after all these years, he still fascinates us.
Yeah, because in a world that often feels uncertain and unpredictable, Sherlock Holmes reminds us that there's always a solution, a reason, an explanation. We just have to train our minds to see it.
And as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of Sherlock Holmes, we want to leave you with this thought. What mysteries are waiting to be uncovered in your own life?
Ooh, I like that. What clues are hidden in plain sight, just waiting for a sharp mind to put them together. Maybe it's time to channel your inner Sherlock and start paying attention.
The game is afoot. And it's those flaws that make his successes, his triumphs, all the more impressive because we understand, what he's had to overcome, the challenges that he's had to face.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like those imperfections, those little weaknesses are what make him human. They make him vulnerable. And that's what makes him relatable. It makes him real.
Exactly.
And it makes his wins, his successes even more meaningful because we understand the struggles that he's been through and all the stuff that he's faced.
It's true. His flaws become part of his story, part of what makes him such a well-rounded character. And that journey, those adventures, those times when he's brilliant and, when he makes mistakes. Those are the things that keep us so captivated. They draw us into his world and make us think differently.
It really makes you think what would Sherlock Holmes make of our world today with all the technology, the internet, and just constant information everywhere? Would he embrace it or would he see it as like a distraction from real, old school observation?
That's a really interesting question to think about. Would he be scrolling through social media looking for clues? Or would he be like, oh, nobody does good old-fashioned deduction anymore?
Right. Maybe he'd be like a total tech whiz, hacking into databases, using algorithms to crack cases. Or maybe he'd find it all a bit too surface level, like a digital curtain hiding the real truth.
It's tough to say, but I think no matter what he would adapt, he was always so good at using the tools that were available to him and his main principles, like observation, logic, deduction. Those never really go out of style.
Yeah, that's so true. No matter how much the world changes, the basics of solving problems stay the same.
Hmm.
You still have to look closely, gather your evidence, and then use logic to come to conclusions.
Exactly. And at the heart of it, Sherlock Holmes is a problem solver. He shows us that even in a world that keeps getting more complex, the human mind, with its power to reason and analyze, is still our most valuable tool.
So in a way, Sherlock Holmes is more than just a character in some stories, right? He's like this symbol of what the human mind can do.
I think so. He embodies our desire for knowledge, that need to understand the world around us, the need to find answers when everything seems chaotic. And I think that's why, after all these years, people are still fascinated by him.
It's because in a world that can feel so uncertain and unpredictable, Sherlock Holmes reminds us that there's always a solution, a reason, an explanation. It's just up to us to train our minds to see it.
And so, as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of Sherlock Holmes, we want to leave you with this thought. What mysteries are out there waiting to be solved in your own life?
Oh, I like that what clues are hidden in plain sight, just waiting for someone with a keen eye, to put them all together. Maybe it's time to tap into your inner Sherlock and start paying closer attention.
The game is afoot.